I'm not making rolls this year. And it's funny, I used to always, okay, good sound. I used to always worry about rolls at Thanksgiving, Christmas dinner, whatever holiday dinner, because I was always after the perfect roll, the good old fluffy dinner roll. And I tried different recipes and I had some really good ones for a while. And the problem was, this was before I switched to my whole food plant-based way of eating. So the rolls that I used to make back in the day were like, grandma's recipe, which was butter, flour, flour, sugar, yeast, milk, and that was about it. And yeah, I said sugar. So I had all these great recipes where I watched my mother-in-law make, from scratch rolls, and they were real fluffy and delicious. Well, I used to make those. Well, then I tried to make my healthy whole wheat version, and they were never very good. And then even, to make them really good, traditional, they do require some fat like butter or oil and sugar and salt, whatever. So when you try not to have that, when you try to make rolls without those things, they don't turn out very good. They're just not that great. So last year I didn't make any rolls. I think I bought those. Can't remember the name of them, but they're sold in the frozen section of the grocery store, and they're in a foil pan, and you cook them in the oven. And the family ate those. I didn't eat them. I didn't care. But this year I said, you know what? Since last Christmas, I taught a really successful sourdough bread class, and that's what I have here. I have 2 resting bowls of sourdough bread, and I'm going to let them rest a little bit longer back here, get them out of the way, but they need to rest for a few more minutes before I do the final shaping. So I'm going to talk about a few other non-bread related things. But so I did a really good sourdough bread class this year. It was in the spring. And I'll post a link to it when I post some information about this class, and I'll talk about the bread class. I can't give you all the recipes because it's a class that I sell on my website. And a lot of you probably aren't even interested in making sourdough bread. But if you are, then I have a sourdough bread class that has one part of a recorded video of me making the sourdough starter and the basic bread. And then there's a second part, which is a class, a Zoom class where I go through some other versions of bread. So it's a lot of information. It's 2 big recipe packets, 2 videos. But out of all of that, what happened to me is I ended up with a really good sourdough starter that I've kept alive, and I feed it every week. And then I also have a recipe for a delicious, delicious seeded bread. And I really like to make this bread because it's soft and delicious and has texture. And I also use a special kind of flour. Here's an example of my flour. This is one of the types I used in my bread today. It's called Stardust. And it is a whole wheat flour, but it's a very light, it's an organic, hard white wheat flour. So it's whole wheat, but it's a white whole wheat. So the flours that I'm using from a company called Barton Springs Mill, their flours are superior because they have a variety of different ones, and some of them are really light, like that one. It's a very fine, light-looking flour, but it's still whole wheat. And they also have some whole wheat flours that have been sifted a little bit, and that makes them lighter. Because truthfully, when you try to make rolls or bread with 100% whole wheat, and you don't put things like oil and sugar and things, they tend to kind of be a little bit on the not so great side, really dense, and people don't like them. I'm okay with them, but I don't even love them. I don't crave them or anything. So to make something that tastes better, making a whole grain bread, I found some ways around it by using superior flour, using different ingredients. But it's basically, with sourdough bread, it's water, flour, salt, and that's it, and starter. And starter is made from flour and water. So some of you watching probably enrolled in that class, in the sourdough bread class. I bet you did. So you probably have all those recipes and haven't even made sourdough bread. If you're one of those people, comment, because I know some of you take my classes and never make the food. So if you're listening and you've already bought those classes, let me know. But it wasn't even expensive. It was $59 for all those sourdough classes. And I put weeks and weeks of effort into making them understandable, very detailed. And one thing I learned for sure is it's hard to make your own starter. So I got started from a bread class that I took in the community where a guy has really excellent bread and he sells it. And so with his bread and his starter, I was able to make really good sourdough bread. So I've just kept his starter going. And then I took another class at Barton Springs Mill where I get my flour. And that was another good class. I learned a lot more. What guys doing over there? I don't know. They're chewing something that doesn't sound normal. But anyway, so I took the Barton Springs Mill class. I took the class from the local bread guy. Then I read a bunch of books. So I've gotten really good at making bread. So this year, my bread's resting. I have a few more minutes. I have this sourdough bread, but it's made with this white whole wheat flour. So it's going to be a very light and delicious bread. And I'm making it now because I wanted to test it and also take some with me when I go on a trip because I like to take my own stuff. Sometimes I can't find what I want. So I'm going to take my own stuff. So that's why I'm not making rolls because I cannot figure out a way to make rolls that taste as good as I want them to taste. So I'm going to make my bread because my seeded bread and it's covered with, and I'm going to show you how I put seeds on the outside. I've got seeds that I put together my own seed mix. I'm going to put it on the outside and it has this really delicious crust. The seeds are sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds, sesame seeds, and poppy seeds. And that just makes really, really good topping on the bread. They're just playing. Dogs, they make me nervous sometimes when I hear sounds coming from them. Okay, so let's talk for a minute while I'm waiting for the bread to rest just for a few more minutes, and then I'll show you how I do the final shaping and put them in the baskets. I have my, little bannetons here ready to go, and I'll do a little demo, a mini demo on the bread stuff. But let's talk for a minute about my Thanksgiving menu because I told you all that I would be doing some of these recipes. Some live demos or recorded demos. I'm not sure exactly what I'll do, but I'm going to do a bunch of demos in the coming couple weeks before Thanksgiving to show you, how I make my Thanksgiving dinner because I'm plant-based. So I like to have a healthy Thanksgiving dinner that tastes really good. I don't want it to be like a tofurkey. I don't really like tofurkey. I've had it before and it doesn't appeal to me. It's kind of fake meat tasting. And then anything made with seitan, 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 it's vital wheat gluten, and made into like a fake meat. I don't like those. I'm just picky about stuff. What I do like, I like things made from whole ingredients that taste like the ingredients. So I make a really, really good veggie burger, and it's just made from black beans, some brown rice, some kind of breadcrumbs or something. It has a lot of just real ingredients in it, nothing strange. It's got some chopped vegetables that are sauteed. And these burgers taste delicious. And so I've been thinking about taking that recipe and making some kind of a little loaf with it that will be like a veggie loaf, but not really the loaf texture, good. It has a good texture. So I'm going to play around with that instead of the one I have I have a Thanksgiving feast recipe packet in class I taught a couple years ago. And it's got a huge list of recipes. And one of the recipes in here is a veggie loaf. And it's a good one. There's nothing wrong with it. It's made with, I'm trying to think what that one has, lentils. So it has lentils. But I like the one I've been making more recently with the beans instead of lentils. Let's see, 22 people watching. That's great. Thank you guys for watching. So I'm going to make some kind of a loaf-ish kind of thing, but it's going to taste good. But, even then, a lot of people like Thanksgiving for the sides, not for the main thing. Even back when people were eating turkey and ham, plant-based people, if they ever were. But, I used to make all that stuff. I liked the turkey and ham, but I like the side dishes just as much, or if not better, some of them. So I concentrate a lot on making those good. And then I also like certain ones. If anybody wants to tell me what you like to make for your Thanksgiving, be sure and put it in the comments because I can read the comments as I'm talking. So, certain things I always associate with Thanksgiving that I kind of miss, like cornbread dressing, because my father would make the best cornbread dressing. So I had to figure out how to make cornbread, plant-based, no oil, no fake stuff. And I did. I make a really good cornbread. It's on my YouTube channel. And then I had to figure out how to make something that tastes kind of like sausage to put it in. So it would be like, my uh, dressing from childhood. So I made my oat sausage, which is made from oats and brown rice, and then crumble it up and put it in my cornbread dressing. And then I have this delicious dressing that tastes like my old cornbread dressing. And then some of the other things, gravy. Gravy's not hard to make. It just takes a little bit of brown rice flour and some broth. And I could take mushrooms and onions and celery and cook it down. And then, add the stuff to thicken it. I could strain it and it's really smooth or keep it chunky. So gravy was one of the easier things to figure out how to make. Mashed potatoes. Mashed potatoes are easy to make, just with cashew cream instead of butter and milk. And they taste delicious. My husband now, who's not plant-based, he really likes the mashed potatoes that I make, and he eats them all the time, even though they have no butter, no cream, no half and half. They're just cashew cream and potatoes. That's it. Another one I made for my son, who's no longer with us. So this is a sad thing that I'll probably make it this year. I don't think I made it last year because it was too sad. I wrote down what I made last year. I kind of keep track of it. Let's see if I made it. Last year, yeah, I did make it last year. So he always requested green bean casserole. And he liked the green bean casserole that has like cream of mushroom soup and canned onion rings, those fried onion rings in a can, and mushrooms and awful stuff and, not even good green beans. And so I thought, I can make that better. So I made my own version of green bean casserole with my own sauce. So I figured out, which wasn't hard, how to make a sauce from some plant-based flour. Well, all flour is plant-based, but a good flour. And, some cashew milk and different things. And so I made a really good sauce, mushroom cream sauce to go with the green bean casserole. And instead of using those fried onion rings in a can, those are, full of all kinds of preservatives. I made my own version of that by just taking some shallots and putting them in the oven and crisping them up like in the air fryer. So I made some crispy shallots. So that worked out really well. Another thing that was really popular. So nobody's telling me. I'm asking you, what are your favorite Thanksgiving things? If you're plant-based, what have you adapted and make now as a plant-based Thanksgiving? Let's see, I still have about 10 more minutes till my bread's ready. Let's see. Looks like more people have come on. Wow, that's good, 28. Another thing that I love to make that was something that I made for my kids when they were young was sweet potato casserole. And this is the sweet potato casserole that the recipe I used it was from a book called, I can't remember the name of it, My Louisiana Kitchen. And it was full of butter, cream, and sugar, and pecans, and more butter, cream, and sugar. It was really good, but it was really, really sweet and very fattening. I mean, it was just full of all this stuff. And so I thought, how can I even come close to that? Oh, and it was topped with marshmallows. So I took sweet potatoes and I made I made them even sweeter by adding date syrup and then a few other things, some cashew cream. And then I did put them in a casserole dish and put some chopped pecans on them. But then I used vegan marshmallows. I made dressing in the Instant Pot. Great. I bet that was good. So I made a sweet potato casserole, a green bean casserole, mashed potatoes and gravy, apple and oat sausage dressing, some kind of loaf, and I'm going to make a new one this year. And then I made stuffed pickled jalapenos, which is It sounds weird, but it's a really good relish thing to have, on the side because you're eating all this kind of bland food and something spicy. So I took jalapeno peppers, pickled jalapeno peppers, and stuffed them with vegan, plant-based, oil-free Kite Hill cream cheese. They were really good. Everybody liked those. And then broccoli rice casserole, which was really good. Something that a lot of people love. And then I even had a broccoli salad and a cranberry sauce. And there's different ways to make cranberry sauce. So anyway, those are just the highlights. I'm going to go ahead and start messing with my bread because I don't want to bore you with all this. But what I'm going to do in the coming 3 weeks before Thanksgiving is I'm going to take this is my book of all my classes. I'm going to take these Thanksgiving recipes and I'm going to make them here and there, just, one here, one there, just to demonstrate to you, what I'm going to be making and give you some ideas. Oh, and dessert, I made a really good pecan pie. I found a way to make a pie crust, not using oil or butter, but using some flour and some other ingredients. So I made a really good pie crust and I made pecan pie because I love pecans. And we're going to be getting some pecans from San Saba, which is a little town here in Texas that's considered to be the pecan capital. What do you got over there? It better not be anything you're not supposed to have. So I'm going to make pecan pie, and I've made other things, but I don't really love the way pumpkin pie tastes using just pumpkin and date syrup and different things. I've made it, and it's okay, but I don't crave it. It's just kind of like, it's all right. But my friend came, and she made something that was really good. It was called vegan pumpkin pie crumble. And I thought her recipe was pretty good, so I may try to make that. Okay, so let's talk about the bread. So I've got my bread here. I've made 2 loaves of bread. I washed my hands right before we started, but I'm going to wash them again real quick. To find, what I've been touching. And I'm trying. So what I'm doing here is I'm taking my bread. Have you got? I was looking to see if he had something, but he didn't. Who knows what these dogs are up to? So I've got my bread, and now I've got to do the final shaping. So they've been through all these different things. Let's see. I'm looking forward to your sweet potato casserole. Great. Do you have my Thanksgiving recipe packet? Because my class is called Thanksgiving Feast, and it's on my website. I'll post a link to the Thanksgiving class when I do this post. And the sourdough bread class is on there, and the Thanksgiving class and all the recipes is on there, and a Zoom class. So I put a little flour on the top of this. I'm going to turn it over to do the shaping. So I've got it turned over so it's not going to stick to my board. And the final shaping is I'm just going to take it and I'm just kind of doing a little bit of maneuvering with it, kind of folding it around like that. And this is all in that class, so I don't want to bore you with all that. And then I'm going to roll it up because I want it to be nice and I want it to get tight so that it will develop air pockets. And in order to do that, you have to kind of strengthen it and tighten it up. And that's why we do all the shaping and rolling. And then the final thing with this, my hands are kind of sticky. I don't usually put a lot of flour on my hands, just a little bit. So then once I've done that, for this bread, it's a seeded bread. And I didn't even demonstrate this on my sourdough class because we didn't make this bread. I don't think you did. But here's all my seeds. And then on this particular bread, I'm going to take it and I'm going to just put the seeds on the top. I don't want them on the bottom. That's not necessary because you just don't see the seeds on the bottom of the loaves of bread, just kind of on the sides and the top. And then once I've done that, and I'm kind of making sure they get all over because you don't want it to be kind of naked. And then I have my banneton. And the next thing to do is I just need to transfer it into this banneton like that. And then what I do, and it won't stick to the banneton because it's covered with seeds. So tomorrow morning, I'll put this in the refrigerator overnight to ferment, and that's how you develop flavor, and it will rise up. And then tomorrow morning, tomorrow sometime, how many of you want to see me bake the bread? Anybody interested in that? Because I could do a video when I get up in the morning and make my bread and actually bake it. It probably won't be live because I have to do this, put it in the pan, put it in the oven, get it out. But I can make a little video of it. If you're interested, comment that you want to see me do that. So anyway, here's what it looks like. It goes in the fridge, and I turn it over. I flip it over. I can't do it now, but in order to cook it in sourdough bread, we cook it in like a cast iron oven. I flip it over. The top has a nice seated dome. I make one sharp cut down the middle, and then that's it. I put it in the oven, and it comes out, and it's a beautiful, nice and tall, delicious seeded whole wheat sourdough bread. So that's number one. Then remember, if you watched the first time, I have my round of bread here. I turn this around. So I think making bread is so much fun. I dust the top. Let's see. I'm looking forward to same thing. All right. Just more people coming on. I think we're up to 31. That's outstanding, guys. So I sprinkle a little flour on the top. And, getting your own starter, if you have a local bakery or something that has, that makes sourdough bread, or somebody who makes sourdough bread that you can always ask them if they'll sell you some of their starter. Some people will just give it to you. They don't want to sell it to you. Like me, if you ask me for my starter, I just give it to you. And then I'm rolling it up to tighten it up. And I'm shaping it kind of into the oblong shape. Then I remember I put this more seeds on here. And I kind of got this a little dry with my flour. So I need to wet my hands and wet that a little bit, because those seeds aren't going to stick on it if it's dry. I know that. So I just wet my hands and wet it a little bit. Then remember, I just stick it in the seeds. So when I had my sourdough pizza class, I had an in-person class here at my house, and I made all the pizza dough for people in advance. We wouldn't have been able to make it because it takes some time. So you could see the top of it. Doesn't that look cool? All the seeds. So when I had that class, everybody got to have their pizza dough, and then they were lucky because I sent them home with some. Oh, that looks great. I sent them home with their starter. So they left here with sourdough starter, and then they could make their own. So I'd like to see you finish the process. Okay, Dorothy, yeah, I'll do that. What I'll do is I'll make a recorded video. I can't go live because it'll take, it just doesn't lend itself to going live. I can do a recorded video. And then remember, I take this and I stick it in the banneton like that. And so I have two of these. And I'll be able to make 2 loaves of bread. And what I do with them, first of all, I cover them with a towel overnight so they don't dry out, and put them in the refrigerator. But I have all these different bread ovens. And I'll show you the bread oven. The bread oven I plan to use tomorrow is this one. Because remember, my loaves are shaped diagonally. So I'll use this one because it's more of a, oblong shaped bread cast iron pan. And the baking part is another kind of tricky part, because you have to put that pan in the oven, and it has to heat up at 500 degrees. And then you lower the oven and put the bread in, and then you just have this beautiful bread. I'll show you tomorrow. So that's why I'm not making rolls. I'm going to be making my seeded sourdough bread for Thanksgiving this year. And I know that's a little odd when you think about it. You're just going to have slices of bread. Well, the bread is really good. It's like delicious bread. Everywhere I've served it, I served it at a fancy dinner party at the beginning of the year. And, it was like one of these dinners that people buy at an auction. here in my eye. And my part was to make salad, bread, and an appetizer board. So I made all those things, but my bread, I had it, sliced up. And I just had it sliced in smaller pieces and I put it in a nice basket. That bread was eaten up. Everybody ate it and they even asked about it after the fancy dinner party. And they said, is there any more of that bread left? And that was this bread, this seeded bread that I'm making tomorrow. So this bread is super popular and I think it would be good for a holiday meal. Just when you make it, you just cut it into slices and then slice those slices in half and put them in a basket. You don't need rolls. You don't really even need bread if you think about it. But to me, part of the fun of the holiday meal was to have some really delicious homemade rolls. And so now I've got my version of homemade rolls, which is really homemade bread. So, if you're interested in that, I highly recommend my class, not because it's my class, but because for my plant-based people that don't want to use butter and sugar and oil, I and it's not even used in sourdough bread, but people who wanted, different kinds of breads and things that don't use those products. And also sourdough bread that's made with white bread flour is not very nutritional. It really isn't. Bleached white bread flour is just white flour. It's stripped of all nutrients. So, I'm making these breads and they're made with whole wheat flours. And some of the whole wheat flours, hey, quit that. Some of the whole wheat flours have been sifted where some of the bran has been sifted out. It makes it lighter, but it's not as processed as white flour. It still has the germ in it. It may have some of the bran sifted out because when you have wheat, the wheat kernel has the endosperm, which is the inside. It's got the germ. It's got the bran. So, when it's been stripped of everything, all you have left is the white part. And that's the part that we're used to, that we grew up eating. So I'm more about let's have a bread that's whole grain or at least close to whole grain, 80% whole grain or something, so that you're not just eating something that has no nutritional value. And then like with, I told you about the Barton Springs Mill, uh, Amazon delivery, the Barton Springs Mill Company, their flours are all made, they're all stone ground at their facility. So they have contracts with farmers all over America that produce wheat for certain purposes. And they tell me that they're mostly organic. And I think they have organic on their label. Yes, organic. All their wheats are organic. And they, the farmers that grow their wheat, they're like small quantities. I mean, big enough for Barton Springs Mill to sell it, but small quantities. And so they're very well made, farmed very well with organic farming practices. And then the wheat comes to Barton Springs Mill and they mill it and they sell flour in their store, or you can buy it online. So I usually order it online because I live about 3 hours from them. But I've gone there to take classes and stocked up on flour. And the flour keeps well if you put it in the freezer. So what I do is I buy whatever kind I'm going to use and I freeze it and then use it as I need it. And then when I need more, I buy more, stick it in the freezer. So if I were to try to make my bread with common grocery store flour, I would not really like it anymore because I've grown used to this really good tasting flour. And it has such a richness and an aroma. There's just something about it that is not found in just run-of-the-mill flour. Run-of-the-mill, that was no pun intended. So anyway, that's what my bread class is all about, using whole grain flours, but not so whole grain that it tastes so dense and unappealing that nobody would eat it. So I figured out a way to make it taste really good, even though it was whole grain, to make it less, dense. And then like this one topped with the nuts and seeds and stuff, it's just so delicious. It doesn't even need anything on it, but I'll put things. What do people use that are plant-based on their bread? We don't use butter. I don't use Earth Balance because it has oil in it. But what I do use is I use hummus, avocados. I use all kinds of almond butters, just gourmet almond butters, everything from chocolate almond butter to hazelnut almond butter and maple flavored almond butter and pistachio almond butter. I have all this huge collection of almond butters and peanut butters. And so I can put a little smear of some kind of nut butter and I make homemade jam. Sometimes I don't have any going right now, but in years past, I made fig jam. And you can find jams and jellies that are not made with a lot of sugar. And I don't really like the ones that are 100% sugar free and fruit only, usually. Some of them are okay, but I like to get the ones that are preserves with a low sugar content, and I'll eat those because I don't use a lot. It's not like I'm eating a jar of them. I'm putting a spoonful on my bread. So if it has a little sugar, I don't care. So if you're fascinated with learning the sourdough bread process and just want to dive in and do that, I hope you do because it really is worth it. And there's nothing as good as your own homemade bread. And it's a little time consuming in the beginning because you have to learn how to make starter or feed starter or maintain starter, and then what flours to use and quantities. Well, I made all that very simple in my class because those were all the questions I had. Because you can't just get a recipe. If you just were to Google how to make sourdough bread, you're going to get all these recipes and they're all going to be different and they're all going to talk in code. They're going to talk about percentages and bulk fermentation, and nobody's going to really show you the steps from the first to the final step, everything, including making your own starter. However, I would advise you not to try to make your own starter because it's frustrating if it doesn't work. You can go to several websites, and I have those in my class. I tell you where you can go, and you can order a starter that's already ready to use. You just have to feed it with water and flour, and then you have starter. So you don't even have to worry about making your own starter. So if you're excited about that, and then from the process of making sourdough bread, I made sourdough pizza. And that sourdough pizza crust made from whole wheat flours with all my plant-based toppings made the most delicious pizza ever. I have 2 different things at my house where we made my plant-based pizza, including a group of chefs. And they liked it. They thought it was really good. Now, they made their own versions too, but they tasted my plant-based tofu crumbles that taste like sausage. And they tasted all my, gourmet vegetable toppings. And they were all just really impressed with how good you can make a plant-based thing like a pizza. So, anyone have any questions about anything? Let me know. I can read the comments before I sign off. So remember, the plant-based Thanksgiving recipes can be found in my class called Thanksgiving Feast. And I'm going to post a link. I'm going to do a separate post where I go through and post all these links. And you can find the bread class. You can find the Thanksgiving Feast class. But in the meantime, even though I'm telling you where you can get the class, I think it's $20 for all those recipes and a video. I'm going to make them for you, a lot of them live here on Substack. So if you don't even get my class, don't worry. You'll still be able to see me make the recipes. Of course, you'll have to look them up one at a time, which might be a pain, but still you'll be able to get them. Hi, Terry. Let's see who's on here. Joanna, Kathy. Glad to see you guys. I appreciate you watching these live videos. They are going to YouTube as well. And so all of a sudden, my YouTube channel has gotten real active and all these people are commenting. And it kind of cracked me up because the other day I said, I'm just going to go live and do whatever I'm doing and not make a big deal out of it. Well, that's what happened today because I was making this bread for myself. And I said, I still have some steps left to do on the bread. I'll just go live and make them live. So that's why I'm doing this today and talking a little bit about Thanksgiving. So I hope to see you all soon. My next video, I'm not sure exactly when I'm going to do it. It's probably going to be something from my list of recipes, and it's probably going to be a broccoli salad because I harvested broccoli from my garden the other day, and there was a lot of it. So I need to use it. So if I'm going to do it, it's going to have to be tomorrow. So I'm hoping to find time tomorrow to do a video of making the broccoli salad. However, if I don't get to make a video or something, at least I'll make it and show a picture of it with the recipe. So the broccoli salad is like those things with, hey, guys, quit that. It's like broccoli and cranberries and a creamy dressing and some red cabbage. It's really good. It's one of those cold dishes that people bring to Thanksgiving. So that's it for today, guys. I'm going to get this in the fridge and I'm going to work on planning what I'm going to do tomorrow. I'm not sure what time I'll post that video, but I've got to get it up and bake the bread and film myself baking the bread. So we'll see how that goes tomorrow morning. I may get up super early with the time change. I've been getting up really early. So I may get up really early and do it. It's going to be dark probably in my kitchen, but I can still do it and we'll see how it goes. All right. Thanks, everybody. And thanks for tuning in and watching me. I really appreciate it. Bye-bye.